There's a version of you that exists only in spreadsheets. This version has calculated every decision perfectly. They've optimized their tax strategy, maximized their retirement contributions, and never bought coffee out. They're winning at money. But here's what nobody tells you about that version of yourself. They might also be the one who forgot how to actually live. I want to tell you about Michael. He's not a real person, but he's made up of about 15 people I've known or spoken with over the years. Michael is 34. He makes $85,000 a year. He has $42,000 in his retirement accounts, no debt except a reasonable mortgage, and he's saving about 30% of his income. By every metric we use to measure financial success, Michael is doing everything right. He's the person financial advisors would point to and say, "Look, this is how you do it." But Michael hasn't taken a real vacation in 4 years. When his friends invite him to dinner, he runs a quick calculation in his head about whether the restaurant fits his budget. He's been wanting to take a photography class for years, but it costs $300, and every time he thinks about signing up, another voice reminds him that $300 invested at 7% returns would be worth almost $800 in 20 years. He's living in a prison made of optimization, and the walls are built from perfectly logical financial decisions. This is the trap nobody warned you about. Not credit card debt, not lifestyle inflation, not even keeping up with the Joneses, though that's related. The real trap is this. Somewhere between learning to be responsible with money and actually being responsible with money, you can cross a line where financial discipline stops being a tool and becomes an identity. And once it becomes your identity, you're stuck in a pattern that's incredibly hard to recognize because it looks like you're doing everything right. Let's talk about what actually happens in your brain when this shift occurs. There's a concept in psychology called the sunk cost fallacy, but there's another, less discussed phenomenon that's almost the opposite. We could call it the invested future fallacy. It's when you make decisions based not on what you've already spent, but on what you could potentially have if you don't spend anything now. Every present moment becomes a calculation against a theoretical future that, if you're honest with yourself, is always just slightly out of reach. Here's how it starts. You're in your 20s, maybe drowning in student debt or living paycheck to paycheck, and you discover personal finance. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a YouTube channel, maybe it's a friend who seems to have it all figured out. You learn about compound interest. You learn about the power of saying no to small expenses. You learn that a daily $5 coffee habit costs you over $36,000 over 20 years when you factor in investment returns. This information is powerful. It's empowering. For the first time, you feel like you understand the rules of a game everyone else seemed to know instinctively. So you start playing the game. You cut expenses. You automate your savings. You feel the satisfaction of watching your net worth increase month after month. You open your investment app and see the numbers going up, and it triggers the same reward center in your brain that lights up when you accomplish anything meaningful. This is good. This is healthy. This is exactly what you should be doing in your 20s and early 30s. But here's where the trap sets in. Slowly, without realizing it, the optimization becomes the point. Saving money stops being a means to an end and becomes the end itself. You start identifying as someone who's good with money. You start judging others who aren't. You see someone buying an expensive coffee and think, don't they know they're throwing away their financial future? You feel morally superior because you brought lunch from home. The identity hardens, and once that identity hardens, you're trapped. Because now every financial decision isn't just about money. It's about who you are. Spending money on something that doesn't maximize returns feels like a betrayal of yourself. Taking a vacation feels irresponsible. Buying something just because it would make you happy right now feels weak. You've accidentally turned your life into an endless optimization problem where the goal keeps moving further away. There's a term in the minimalism community that applies here too: compulsory asceticism. It's when you're not choosing simplicity because it makes your life better. You're choosing it because you've made it part of your identity, and now you can't choose anything else without feeling like you're failing. The same thing happens with money. You're not making wise financial choices anymore. You're performing financial wisdom for an audience that only exists in your head. I want you to think about something for a moment. What's the number? You know the one I'm talking about. The number that would mean you've made it. The number where you could finally relax. For some people, it's 100,000 in savings. For others, it's 1 million. For some, it's a paid-off house. Whatever your number is, I want you to be honest with yourself about this. What happens when you reach it? Because here's what I've observed over and over again. People reach their number, and instead of feeling free, they move the goalposts. Suddenly, 100,000 isn't enough. You need 200,000. 1 million isn't enough. You need 2 million. You need more cushion. You need more security. The horizon keeps receding. This isn't about being motivated or having goals. This is about something deeper. It's about the fact that you've built an identity around always preparing, always optimizing, always deferring. And identities don't change just because your bank balance does. If you've spent 5 or 10 years being the person who says no to things, who calculates the opportunity cost of every decision, who feels anxiety about spending money even on things that would genuinely improve your life, that person doesn't just disappear when you hit your financial targets. Let me tell you what this looks like in real life. I know someone, let's call her Sarah, who spent her entire 20s being incredibly disciplined with money. She worked 2 jobs, saved aggressively, invested wisely. By 32, she had nearly $200,000 saved, no debt, great credit score, everything by the book. Her parents got sick, both of them, within a year of each other. Nothing terminal, but serious enough that they needed help. They lived across the country. Sarah had the money to take time off work. She had the money to fly back and forth as needed. She had the money to hire help for them. But she couldn't bring herself to do it. She kept running the calculations. She kept thinking about how much it would set back her financial goals. She kept trying to optimize the situation, to find the most cost-effective solution. It took her sister, who had far less money but flew out immediately, to finally snap her out of it. And even then, even after she went and helped and spent the money, she felt guilty about it for months. The trap had become so complete that she couldn't separate taking care of the people she loved from betraying her financial identity. Here's the thing about money that we don't talk about enough. Money is a tool, yes, but it's a tool that's only useful when you use it. A hammer sitting in a toolbox isn't doing anything, it's just sitting there. And at some point, if you never take the hammer out because you're worried about wearing it down or breaking it or not using it for the optimal project, you don't really have a tool anymore. You have a symbol. You have something you can point to and say, look, I have this, but it's not serving its purpose. The purpose of money is not to accumulate money. I know that sounds obvious, but look at your behavior. Look at your decisions. Are you living like someone who understands that? Or are you living like someone who's trying to win a game that doesn't have a finish line? There's a concept in economics called diminishing marginal utility. Basically, the first slice of pizza when you're hungry is incredible. The second is good, The third is okay. The fourth might make you feel sick. The same principle applies to money. The first $10,000 in your emergency fund is life-changing. It's the difference between security and chaos. The second $10,000 is helpful. The third is nice to have. But somewhere along the line, each additional dollar you save instead of using for something that would genuinely improve your life starts having negative utility. Not because saving is bad, but because you're sacrificing present well-being for future security that you might never feel secure enough to enjoy. I'm not saying you should blow all your money on whatever feels good in the moment. That's not what this is about. I'm saying that there's a difference between being financially responsible and being financially imprisoned. And the difference is this. Responsibility means making conscious choices about what you value and aligning your money with those values. Imprisonment means following rules you've internalized so deeply that you can't even remember why you're following them anymore. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you spent money on something that wasn't optimized? When was the last time you bought something or did something that was just for the joy of it, without calculating the return on investment? When was the last time you said yes to an experience because it sounded interesting, not because it fit into your financial plan? If you're struggling to answer those questions, you might be in the trap. And here's what makes it so insidious. From the outside, you look successful. You look disciplined. You look like you have it all figured out. People probably ask you for financial advice. You might even give it, sharing the principles that have worked for you, not realizing that those same principles have become a cage. The way out of this trap isn't to suddenly start being irresponsible with money. It's not to abandon your financial goals or stop saving or investing. The way out is to examine your relationship with money at a deeper level. To ask yourself what you're actually optimizing for. To question whether the future you're saving for includes a version of yourself who knows how to enjoy what you've built. There's a reason why some of the wealthiest people I've known are also some of the most anxious. It's not because money creates anxiety, it's because they've never developed a healthy relationship with having money. They only know how to accumulate it, never how to use it. They're like someone who's been told their whole life that dessert comes after dinner, but dinner never ends. They're always in preparation mode, never in enjoyment mode. And here's the really difficult truth. Nobody can tell you what the right balance is. There's no formula. There's no percentage of your income that, if you save it, means you're doing it right. There's no net worth that means you're allowed to relax. You have to figure out what enough means for you, and you have to be willing to actually live according to that definition, not just theoretically agree with it. This might mean spending money in ways that don't make sense on a spreadsheet. It might mean taking that photography class, even though the money could be invested. It might mean going on a vacation that doesn't provide optimal value per dollar spent. It might mean buying something just because it brings you joy, with no other justification needed. The test isn't whether you can afford it in a purely financial sense. The test is whether you can afford not to, whether you can afford to keep deferring your life, whether you can afford to reach the end of your years with a full bank account and an empty life. I think about mortality more than most people probably do, not in a morbid way, but in a practical way. We're all playing a game where we don't know how many rounds we get. And somewhere in your future, there's a last time you'll travel, a last time you'll try something new, a last time you'll be young enough or healthy enough or energetic enough to do the things you keep putting off. Every day you spend optimizing for a theoretical future is a day you're borrowing from a finite supply. You can't get those days back. You can't buy them later, no matter how much money you save. This isn't meant to scare you into spending recklessly. It's meant to wake you up to the fact that financial responsibility without life enjoyment isn't responsibility at all. It's just a different kind of failure. You can fail by spending too much, but you can also fail by living too little. The trap nobody warned you about is this. You can do everything right and still end up with a life that feels wrong. You can hit all your financial milestones and still feel like you're missing something. You can be objectively successful and subjectively empty. And the hardest part is recognizing that the very discipline that got you here might be the thing holding you back from actually enjoying what you've built. So maybe the question isn't how much is enough. Maybe the question is, what is this all for? And if you can't answer that question with something other than a number, maybe it's time to re-examine the game you're playing. Because the only way to win at life is to actually live it, and you can't do that from inside a spreadsheet.